My name is Michael Corona with the Side Network, and we have an interesting topic for you guys today. Does violent video games affect youth's behavior? Well, we read this article, The Impact of Degree of Exposure to Violent Video Games, Family Backgrounds, and Other Factors on Youth Violence. There has been no concurrence in whether or not violent video games affect the youth's behavior. This article studied a diverse group of 5,133 8th graders and 3,886 11th graders. The study related outcomes without control were minimal. Family background and other social factors play a role in youth violence. Ferguson reported that there are probably 50 studies like this one that exist. The results from these studies show minimal correlation between youth violence and video games. However, when the studies included background, gender, neighborhood, the outcome differed when including more factors into the studies other than video games. Video games were not the leading cause of the youth violence. That was an interesting study from The Impact of Degree of Exposure to Violent Video Games, Family Backgrounds, and Other Factors on Youth Violence by Whitney DeCamp and Christopher Ferguson. Now we have some reporters in the field asking the community their thoughts on this. Over to you, AD.
So for our first topic, we discussed the effects of violent video games on young kids. Now for our second topic, we are talking about the dopamine that these video games release into the brains of the young kids. What are your opinions on violent games like Call of Duty and PUBG, and even Assassin's Creed games having addictive properties for kids?
Addictive properties? Like anything specific about them that makes them addicting, or?
Why do you think the games are so addictive? Like, what about the game is so, like,
yes, what makes
draws
it
you
where
in?
Kids want to play the rated M games over, say, rated T and E?
Well, a big thing for me, at least when I was a kid, because I did start playing violent video games when I was younger, was just the thrill of being able to be like, oh my god, I'm like 10 years old and I'm playing Call of Duty. That was a big thing for me. I wasn't as interested in the story mode, obviously. I was way more interested in the aspect of getting to fight against other people. So the multiplayer aspect was definitely very addictive as a kid, though I was really more into shooting zombies and stuff, if anything, but there was still just the idea of shooting at other people that was super interesting as a kid.
Yes. Do you think the competitiveness that is often involved in these rated M games also plays an effect, and why kids want to play them over, say, games geared towards their age?
Yeah, I think that is a big factor of basically like what encourages them to keep going, basically the rage factor. Like, you know, like squeakers back in the day, young kids get really mad really easy, and it makes them get tilted, I guess, and they want to just keep playing to get better and be kind of like in your face to the other people that are playing those video games.
So you're saying that since these games are not meant for kids, it causes them to want to play even more, and then the fan base that is already there for those adults, they see these kids as like easy targets to kind of make fun of and tease?
Pretty much, yeah. I remember being young, definitely, and there was these people that were like very clearly like in their 20s, 30s. They loved just picking on the younger kids that were there, and that gets them mad, gets them want to keep playing, to shoot back at those people. It just is an endless cycle, basically.
Yes. Do you think Halo also had the same effect as Call of Duty?
Halo, I'm going to be honest, I didn't have that, at least personally. I loved Halo, but I loved it a lot more for the story as a kid. It didn't have as much of a competitive factor for me. I definitely didn't get as mad at it, but I did play it a lot more than I did play Call of Duty.
All right. So, do you think the dopamine effect had any say on how much you wanted to play these rated M games? Because when it came to, say, the rated M games compared to, say, T and E, would you say you played more of the rated M games?
I'm gonna be honest, I played a healthy mix of both. I was really into Minecraft as a kid, Viva Pinata, which was a really big one for me, Sonic games, stuff like that. I played Call of Duty, but that was really, like Call of Duty, Halo, those were my only big steps into the rated M genre. I had a healthy mix of both.
All right.
Well, healthy.
Now, what if, say, it's not necessarily target or marketed as a violent video game? Like, say, something like Stellaris. Have you heard of that game?
Not off the top of my head now.
All right, well, it's a space game where you start as just a fledgling species going off into space. Imagine something like Star Wars, but yet you are creating the empire that takes over the galaxy.
Right, so like a strategy type game.
Yes, it's made by Paradox. In that game, you have the option of committing mass genocide on intergalactic levels
Okay.
and harvesting and eating these species that you take over. Do you think that level of aggression and dominance would be addictive to some kids?
I think not even just kids. I think anyone would like to have that thrill of being like, wow, wouldn't it be like screwed up if I did this? And then just doing it
Yes.
because there's no real world consequences to it.
No, in that game you can even build an equivalent of the Death Star.
And just go and decimate a planet.
Yes.
Jesus.
Obviously, a lot more.
Yeah.
I can't just go into all the details here.
Right.
I have played the game a little.
Yeah.
It is fun. I have to admit.
Yeah.
But I try not to.
I was gonna say, have you gravitated towards the genocidal part of it at all?
I'd like to say I've done one of every kind of playthrough.
Okay.
And there's like 12 different options. You can be a fanatic pacifist.
Alright.
However, you can also be a fanatic militarist. So there is definitely options in strategy games. However, 9 out of 10 times I would play an aggressive type.
Gotcha.
Mainly because it's a lot easier than strategizing and trying to build
Right.
relationships with your other characters in the game. All right, now what are your opinions on, say, the dopamine effect of always getting the next better equipment in a game and the next better cosmetic?
So like the battle pass appeal.
Yes.
I've always had a negative kind of perception on battle passes. The fear of missing out factor plays into it a
Yes.
very big part.
Like for instance, I'm trying to think of it off the top of my head, but Fortnite not too long ago had a collaboration with Transformers. It had Optimus Prime. I don't really play, but I was thinking about playing just for that. Decided against it, but still, just the idea of missing out on getting Optimus Prime
Right.
made me think to do it.
Even with stuff like Fortnite though, with their every like now and then skins, like their Resident Evil pack is what got me to play. At least that comes back every now and then. The battle pass, they have skins in there that are, if you don't buy it right this instant, you're
It's
never gonna
gone
see
forever.
it again.
Now, I
That's
know
the main
Call
thing.
of
that
Duty.
They do it as well, yeah.
Call of
Except-
Duty does it to some degree, and does PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds also do it?
I
still?
wouldn't be surprised.
And I feel like even more games are also doing it too. That are rated M to like high teen.
Yeah. But yeah,
Alright. Well, thank you very much for all that you've done.
thank you.
Have a good on children playing violent video games.
All right, so children playing violent video games. I don't think that video games are rated in a way that there's enough categories to kind of specifically categorize the video games for kids of a certain age. I'm not totally against it, but I think kind of as a culture we need to be better about letting kids know that it's a game and kind of making them more acute to that aspect of it. Especially at a time where games are becoming much
Hyper
more
realistic.
that and much more prevalent amongst kids.
Yes.
I don't know how old you guys are, but when I was growing up, certain kids played video games, a lot of them didn't, and now it seems like we're more in a space where every single kid plays video games.
Also, do you think the age ratings are too broad or not adequate?
I think they're, like you said, a little too broad, yeah. I think the access to, as you guys know, games have mostly gone digital. So being 10 years old, playing a game where you should be 17, and it's very easy to gain access to that game, as opposed to, having to go to GameStop and get your parents' permission to buy the game.
Now it's just
exactly.
go on to your computer, go to, say, Steam, Epic Games,
Right.
buy a game.
Right.
That's
And I think that creates a little bit of a dangerous culture for it, especially in tandem with not having more specified rating systems to, let the kids know what they might be getting into.
All right. Now, do you think violent games such as Call of Duty and Fortnite have negative effects on children? with the aspect of actually shooting other players?
In some aspects, yeah. I don't think it affects every kid the same way, but you know, in a time where we're taking mental health and things of that nature super seriously, yeah, it should be taken into account if a kid is struggling emotionally or mentally and then is finding relief in, you know, shooting other people on a game. That is something that I think needs to be addressed on a broader scale.
All right. Now, this question might be a bit of a curveball, but now what are your opinions on violent or video games that are necessarily violent, but have an aspect where they can be extremely violent, like city management games? Like, say you're playing City Skylines and you just decide to destroy the road and cause massive sinkholes and destroy an entire city.
Right. Yeah, I think that plays into it too as well, but I think this is a thing with video games that we've always tried to grasp is the consequence to specific actions. And, you know, as a game, they're now becoming even more realistic than they used to be, and that's their way of kind of showing the drastic consequence to decisions made in the game, which has a real world impact as well, because it may help a kid understand the impact of decisions a little bit more than, you know, on a real world scale, where until you're a lot older, you can't make decisions that impact you super heavily. Yeah.
All right. And then also, we might have to edit this just a bit.
Hey, no problem, no problem.
Struggling on, I've run out of questions.
Oh, you're good, man.
So like, talk about like the opposite point of view, like good effects of video games on kids.
Yeah, great. I mean, I think I'm one of them. I had a lot of family that lived outside of the state, and I didn't necessarily have the means to travel and see them all the time. And as soon as Xbox Live came out, it was a great way for us to stay connected and talk to each other all the time. And cousins that I probably wouldn't even know. At this point, we've been great friends for many years just based off connections over Xbox or games that we play together, sometimes not even together, just at the same time. Also, it's an entry point, I think, for kids in school to find friends that they like, find common ground with people, and kind of link up over that as opposed to all the other things. You know, some kids may play soccer, some may not play sports, but they both play video games when they get home, and that kind of gives them a common ground. And the kid who's really good at soccer might play FIFA with the kid who doesn't play soccer and get him interested in the real world aspect of that. So to me, it is, there's a give and take with it, right? But kind of what you guys are doing right now, there's balance in everything. And I think that the gaming industry is going to have a big fight to kind of find that balance with what's good and what's bad and what do we eliminate and what do we keep.
Okay, so it's really up to the person at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. But also the developers. I mean, that responsibility lies with the people creating these games and saying that, you know, this is right for the community and this is what should go out. They hold a big responsibility because Call of Duty creators kind of dictate the shift in the culture and when we're going to change the way we like to play games or what we like to see in our games, you know. That lies with them ultimately, and it guides a lot of the younger kids to just follow along. So,
what impact do you think GTA 6 will have on younger kids?
Hopefully, not a lot of young kids play it. You guys look older, so I'm sure you're excited for the game to come out, much like myself. But you know, I'm also nervous to see at what wild aspects they add to the game, right? Because as much as I'd love to have that kind of game that's all encompassing and all in one place, yeah, I don't really support the movement of just let's do anything we want in a game. You know, there's got to be some real world limitation to it just to ground the game, in my opinion. You know, not everybody shares that, and some people are like, hey, I want to like blow up banks with a helicopter, and if that's your thing, you know. But yeah, I think in the bigger thing is Grand Theft Auto kind of dictating that this is in a game and it's not the real world and it shouldn't be reflected in the real world.
Okay.
I'm a big race car game guy, and I mean, I grew up on Need for Speeds and Forza Horizons and all these really good games, but you know, I'm not on 95 doing 200 miles an hour running from cops. So, you know, it was an important distinction for me to be like, okay, this isn't a game, and then to see the real world application lives at a racetrack, race regulated events where people are safe and can have fun and enjoy it the way you do in a game without the risk that necessarily isn't there in the game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Wow, those were some great interviews we had, great sources we had today. And I think we could all conclude that overall, the impact of violent video games on youth violence is complex and multi-layered. While it is essential to consider the content that children are exposed to and monitor their gaming habits, it's equally important to address the broader social and psychological factors that contribute to violent behavior. Additionally, promoting media literacy and critical thinking skills can help young people navigate the content that they consume, including video games. Thank you for watching. This is Michael Corona with Side Network. You guys have a great evening and see you guys tomorrow.